A 14-year-old walked into court facing felony charges. But by the time she left, it wasn't her who was on trial. It was the entire system. The courtroom felt colder than it should have been. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the stares. Some filled with indifference, others with doubt, and a few with outright suspicion. At just 14 years old, Madison Cole sat at the defendant's table. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers barely twitching. The orange jumpsuit weighed heavy on her shoulders, like it was designed to suffocate her. But she kept her chin up. Her grandfather had drilled that into her. Never show fear. Across the room, Judge Anthony Whitaker adjusted his glasses and let out a loud sigh, as though this entire proceeding was beneath him. His silver hair was slicked back neatly, but there was impatience in his posture, in the way he shuffled papers without once looking at her. The state of Tennessee versus Madison Cole, the bailiff announced. Charge: felony theft and destruction of property. Felony. The word felt absurd, but no one was laughing. The prosecutor, Daniel Clark, rose. His navy blue suit was sharp, his voice steady. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The defendant was captured on surveillance footage at Hendricks Von Morgan Jewelry moments before the store's alarm was triggered. The footage shows her reaching into a display case. Minutes later, the security system was disabled, and a sapphire necklace, worth $12,000, vanished. We also have a witness who claims to have seen the defendant fleeing the scene. Madison didn't blink. She'd heard this speech before. The same smug tone, the same predictable cadence. Her public defender, Mark Jennings, stood awkwardly, barely glancing her way. Your Honor, my client is 14 years old. She has no history of criminal behavior. No preuve. Clark cut in. None on record. Madison's fingers curled into the fabric of her jumpsuit. Judge Whitaker sighed. Let's not waste time. Does the defense have a real argument, or are we heading straight to witness testimony? Jennings flipped aimlessly through his notes. My client wasn't near the store when the theft occurred. Clark smirked. Surveillance footage says otherwise. Finally, Madison spoke. Show it. The courtroom hushed. Judge Whitaker raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. Show the footage, Madison repeated, locking eyes with Clark. There was a beat of hesitation before Clark gestured to the bailiff. Moments later, a grainy black and white video flickered onto a large screen. A girl in a hoodie approached the jewelry counter. Her face was mostly hidden. Her height, her build, it could have been Madison. But Madison knew what no one else in the room did. She watched silently as the girl in the video reached into the display case. Pause it, Madison ordered. The bailiff froze the frame. Look at her left hand. The room shifted as people leaned in, squinting at the screen. Judge Whitaker frowned. What about it? She's wearing a ring on her index finger, Madison said. I don't wear rings. Jennings blinked, clearly thrown off. Clark's smirk faded. And if you rewind a few seconds, Madison continued, look at her shoes. They're too big, and she doesn't walk like I do. Compare that to the footage from when I was arrested. You'll see the difference. Circumstantial, Clark growled. Madison tilted her head. Funny. I thought prosecutors love surveillance footage when it works in their favor. The judge exhaled through his nose. He wasn't entertained, but he wasn't dismissing her either. Madison wasn't done. This was where the tide turned. Judge Whitaker laced his fingers together. You've got quite the sharp eye, Miss Cole. But this isn't a game of spot the difference. You're on trial for felony theft. I know, Madison replied evenly. A murmur rippled through the gallery. People weren't used to kids talking like this in court, especially not ones in orange jumpsuits. The judge sighed. Mr. Jennings, is your client's strategy to play detective? Jennings stammered. And no, Your Honor, we're trying. To prove my innocence, Madison cut in. Isn't that the point? Clark scoffed. Goo. But the fact remains, she was seen at the scene. Actually, I wasn't, Madison shot back. The prosecutor's head snapped toward her. Judge Whitaker's brow lifted. You're saying the witness is wrong? I'm saying they're mistaken. Did they even describe what I was wearing? Clark hesitated. Because if they said I was in that hoodie, she pointed to the frozen video, they're wrong. I don't own a hoodie like that. And if you check my arrest record, I was wearing something completely different. The courtroom buzzed again. Judge Whitaker banged his gavel. Enough. He stared at Madison like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve. You clearly know your stuff. Let's play a little game. Madison's jaw clenched. A game. Truth or lie? I'll ask legal questions. You answer. Jennings looked horrified. Your Honor. Whitaker ignored him. Ready, Miss Cole? She nodded. Burden of proof in a criminal case. Who carries it? The prosecution, Madison replied instantly. Standard. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Whitaker nodded. Mid-and-of. Arizona. What's its impact? She smirked. Miranda writes. But deeper than that. It protected suspect from coerced confessions and reinforced the Fifth Amendment. The judge pressed his lips into a thin line. Exclusionary rule. Illegally obtained evidence can't be used in court. Mumph. Ohio, 1961. The gallery was dead silent now. Judge Whitaker exhaled sharply. One last question. If you get it right, I'll take your claims seriously. Madison squared her shoulders. When can a minor be tried as an adult in Tennessee? A slow smile spread across her face. Over age 14, and if the crime is severe, armed robbery, murder, theft. She shook her head. Not unless there's a serious prior record, which I don't have. The judge leaned back, assessing her. Mr. Clark, he said slowly, why are we treating this as a felony again? Clark's mouth opened, but no words came out. The jury shifted in their seats. For the first time, they were seeing Madison as more than just a defendant. The rest of the trial spiraled from there. The key witness, an aging store clerk named Frank Holloway, fumbled under cross-examination. His description of the hoodie's color didn't match the footage. He'd only seen the suspect for a fleeting second. The more Madison pushed, the weaker the case became. Finally, the jury delivered its verdict. Not guilty. Madison didn't react right away. It didn't feel real. But as she walked out of that courtroom beside her grandfather, Elijah Cole, the weight lifted just a little. Outside, Elijah placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You did good in there. Madison's throat tightened. It shouldn't have come to this. No, Elijah agreed. But you fought back. That's what matters. She looked up at him. What if the next kid doesn't know how? Then they lose, he said simply. Unless someone like you teaches them. Madison didn't smile. Not yet. But something inside her shifted. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning.